Welcome back to Newsmaker Live. We're taking your phone calls starting right now. If you have questions or just comments for the police commissioner, we invite you to call in and share those comments and probably ask those questions. And already I'm hearing the phone line going. Good evening, caller. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Commissioner, good evening to you.
Good evening, sir.
I want to ask you one question, sir, with all due respect. Were you, or was the police task force, not the police task force, yes, the task force of the police department recently disbanded? Were you in favor of that, or were you part of its establishment?
Well,
thank you, caller.
The establishment of the police task force was a policy decision by the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, and I think I'm hearing you saying that it has been disbanded. That is not the case. The task force is still functioning.
Yeah, I think he's gone now, but I mean, if you want to, there's somebody else on the line. Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Pleasant good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Commissioner. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, sir.
I must say, first commissioner I've seen on many walks. It says a lot. Good for the heart, indeed, exercising. And also it says a lot for your team, shows a lot of morale as well, because they're out there with you as well doing that. It says a lot. In regard to an area of concern of mine, and I speak to the human resource side of things, a lot of police officers I've seen in action, meaning there's a situation on hand, someone might be drunk, someone might be cussing, someone might be upset, and their ability to show a level of professionalism, I think, whereby they're the ones who are in control. They sometimes tend to be almost equivalent to the person who's out of control, meaning the body language. And I believe something has to be done on the level of professionalism under pressure. I had an encounter with a chap. He's a very good friend with me at present, but our first encounter was not a nice one. It was carnival time, he was upset, and a lot of, pushing around was going on. But just by saying to him, just put the handcuffs on the guy and just take him away, he got so upset that he turned around with his pump action, not literally pointed at me, but kind of looked at me and like, what are you going to do? And later on we met and we spoke, and he told me, man, I just went through some training, and, I was just under pressure. So I think your guys at times need to, and the public will be more with them too, if they see that, understand that. So on the human resource side, I think they need a little tweaking, how they carry themselves uniform-wise. I'm sure you see it. There are one or two that are just not looking up to par, and it needs to go across the board because, one police officer represents all, correct?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm completely that one police officer represents all, but you need to understand too that police officers are human beings, and they operate in an organizational environment, and any organization that you find, there are people who, I guess, who do not live up to the standard of the organization. I take the point too that it is more obvious in organizations like the police department, because obviously we represent authority figures, and our every action is being monitored. So that's why we keep encouraging the officers to through training, for them to be professional, and for when they encounter situations, you made the point also about them behaving like the victim or the other person that is involved in the situation, and that is not acceptable. But having said that, like I said, sometimes they are human beings, and sometimes they get carried away with the situation. Really.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Thank you very much, caller. Sometimes you have, they're human beings, but they're human beings with very powerful weapons in their hands. So I take his point that the interpersonal relations should be brought into bear.
Yes,
a little bit more. Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Good night, Mr. Reynolds.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Mr. Commissioner.
Good night, sir.
I still looking good today, your coat and tie. Mr. Commissioner, first thing first. You had an interview a couple of days ago when you were made Commissioner of Police. You spoke about rogue cops. What do you intend to do? Haven't they given you the go ahead to look into those rogue cops and those club cops misbehaving. That's number one. That's for your answer, because I know you don't have the authority to fire anybody. You could only make the recommendations. Number two, Mr. Commissioner, I think you have to wake up from your sleep, because not now I've been talking about policemen running on school children. I've been saying that for years now. But, Mr. Commissioner, I have changed my mind on that subject. First to begin, you all now no place to put the children if you arrest them. Where go put them? Some of them children decide to protest. En masse. Where putting them, Mr. Commissioner? That's number two. And Mr. Commissioner, you have to realize you have Abdurrahman, you have Sir Ira, you have George Chance. What age are you targeting when you say they should be at the good after school? They should be at the home by a certain time. So I will leave that the few, but I still feel, Mr. Commissioner, it's a very good idea. You know, I've been saying it for a long time now. But Mr. Commissioner, personally, you know what I feel we need? A boot camp, and I maintain that 2-0. We need a boot camp. Not what you right now. You have criminals doing have a permission in our country. You are stretched with foreign power, and you're going to look at for school children. That permission in the country. Let the parents take care of them, and delete the criminals. Anyway, Mr. Commissioner, I will listen to you over the TV. Good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I guess that whatever policies that you implement, we could have that caller test them out to begin with. But he asked about the rogue cops, the complaints of the children, and the time that you're looking at. We'll take that question, but let's take another call. Good evening. Please go ahead.
Good evening, to you and to Mr. Commissioner.
Good evening, sir.
So far, as a Lucian, St. Lucian citizen, I think that Mr. Vernon Francois has been handling the situation very well, and I think he's doing a very good job. Nobody is perfect, but we can strive for perfection. But so far, Mr. Commissioner, you have been excellent, and I just hope that you keep up the good work with the St. Lucia Police Force. So bravo to you.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. So the previous caller, what is your plan for rogue cops?
Well, the caller indicated that I'm waiting for somebody's authority to tell me to do something about rogue cops. That is not a plan at all. I didn't know authority from absolutely nobody. The Constitution is clear as to my role as it relates to the discipline of police officers, and I propose to exercise the provisions of the Constitution, firmly. In terms of the other issues he raised about the school children and whether we have jail cells and what have you, the size of our cells. Our cells, and I suppose it's applicable not only to school children but to people who, I want to make a more general statement of people breaking the law as opposed to school children, because there is no particular plan to put school children in any cell anywhere. The plan is for us to deal with, if there is any semblance of criminality, the plan is for us to deal with it.
Yeah, I think these were the questions that he asked. Good evening, caller. Please go ahead. We lost that caller. He also questioned the time of it. I mean, when you're talking about loitering and children in uniform, what times are you looking at?
Well, I don't know whether there's any particular time frame. I mean, in terms of breaking the law, is breaking the law. And I mean, I remember him asking about whether it's with students or what have you. I think the fact of the matter is that, I mean, we have to deal with it in a holistic way. And if there is, the whole idea really should be for us to constructively engage our children, and whether it's our followers' children or whether it's other children, I think that's the same should apply.
Good evening. Thank you for holding. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I called earlier and I got caught off. I wanted to ask a
Sorry about that.
question. I am sure one would recall a few months ago, certain allegations were made against the police task force, that they were involved in extrajudicial killing. Of course, it is something I feel differently about that. But I want to ask the commissioner whether that has affected the morale of his force in any way, and what does he think about the allegations that were made about that department? Is
that your final question?
Of course, based on his answer, I would have a follow-up question. If it
okay, well, let me have you hold on for a little while, have him answer, because we can't tap the line for too long. Allow other people to call as well.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, definitely not. The issue of extrajudicial killing, it has not impacted on the morale of the officers. they are still very keen, and you see the actions of officers on the streets. What I've always explained to them is that their actions are constantly subject to review, that they know whatever they act, whether it's task force or whether it's general police officers, that their actions will be reviewed, and if at the end of the review it is found that they are liable for something that is illegal, then the court system will have to deal with it. But in terms of police officers engaging in extrajudicial killing, I've maintained that is definitely not the case, because I mean, if it is extrajudicial, then there will not have been a review process which is conducted by, you know, our judicial system. It starts with obviously the Director of Public Prosecution, and then if there is an inquest, which is a judicial process. In some cases there are criminal trials, which is also a judicial process. So I'm totally, I think whoever is suggesting that there is extrajudicial killings going on in the police department, I think they are trying to mislead the St. Lucian public and the international community at large.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Commissioner. It's not that I believe it, but my follow-up question would have been, you know, it is alleged that this police officer was involved in that department, and I'm not saying that to cast aspersions. It's just that, you know, people make certain allegations that are not unfounded. Sorry, and I think we need to stop that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well, you know, because I mean, when you make those assumptions, you try to draw those, make those connections, and you cast aspersions on people's characters as well. Well, we're due for a break, so let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue with your calls to the Commissioner, Vernon Francois. We can already hear the phone ringing, so stay tuned. We'll be right back on Newsmaker Live.